Hi everyone, it's your buddy, it's your pal, it's Karnik, Star Wars Armada Explained. I'm taking a moment to make an announcement. So, after 10 months of work, many long hours of discussion, rewrites, debates, and so much else, as you guys know, I've been working on a reference manual for Star Wars Armada. It is finished. It's complete as of right now. I am releasing version 1.0 into the world. It includes a total rewrite of the RNG, and not rewrite as in like I change anything, but rather I just kind of restructure it according to my likes and preferences. I put some notes in there. I didn't take anything out from it unless there was like super redundancy. And I made sure that it was, the wording is still absolutely clear and there's no mistake on certain things. So by no means like I changed anything. It's all still left in there. So in here you'll see for the link I'll be linking in the video, you'll see here I've got the full release version. I mean, this thing is close to 400 pages. Somebody's already printed one out, and I do plan to print out my own copy at some point to bring to events. That way, if I ever need to throw the book at someone, I've got it available. It includes, again, all the upgrade cards, the RNG. It's got all the objectives. It even includes, I'm going to go over in a minute, the 2020 Worlds email response I got to some rule questions when we were going to have Worlds. Now we're no longer, maybe not going to have Worlds. Who knows? But to give you an example of like what I have in that reference manual, you'll see that I have it restructured. Any of my thoughts are going to be in purple. If I've gotten like any developer response on something, it's going to be written in red. It includes, in this whole thing, I've tracked down as much of the email responses. Again, making sure I'm including everything from the FAQ in here so you don't have to flip between manuals and books or other things. I mean, everything. You see here, you can see that there's the purple and the red lettering. Anything in the black lettering in the RNG part, that's the original, wording. You'll see here where we get to a part. Like, for example, I added an entire section about, like, objective tokens, what does set aside mean, stuff that's not currently in the RNG, but, like, are defined game terms that people are already using and doing, etc. And just trying to get that organized and laid out for people. Like, for example, getting on here, for example, taking everything in the RNG and condensing it to in one quick section about how measuring, pre-measuring, and how do you measure range, distance, line of sight, fire and arcs. I put that all in one section instead of spread out in like 5 or 6 different sections across the regular RNG. So it's just so much easier just to go to one section and read it rather than flipping back and forth between 4 or 5 different points. I also, probably the biggest thing on here, the 2 biggest ones is, 3, I've got text and things for obstacles and everything on there. Like anything from the Corellian conflict or Rebellion in the Rim, or any of the the little rule insert booklets that come with like the SSD or the Onager or Starhawk or any of the other expansions like Ray, it's all in here now. You don't have to carry, I'll show you, here's my RNG, here's the FAQ, here's Rebellion in the Rim, here's the SSD, here's the Onager, there's the Starhawk, there's Corellian Conflict, here's a Learn to Play booklet. I have to carry all that stuff everywhere I go. So, like, it's just nice to have it in one spot. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've got, like, the toward movement here all nice and written out with that example as well. Yeah, and as you go through here, like when we get to the defense tokens, you'll see here I have my purple wording, like explaining certain interactions and things that can happen. You'll see that there's a lot there already for Salvo. There's a ton for Salvo. And then we get down to, where's the damage cards? Damage cards, I have text for damage cards for practically every single damage card, like interactions, things that could happen, what ifs, things of that nature. And it's just so useful to have this all, especially for people who are new getting into the game and they encounter these situations and maybe don't quite understand how this all works. But yeah, I've got all, you can see on there, I've got all the Imperials and the Rebels separated out, so it's easy to see. Oh, I see here that I forgot to rename that. I have my own personal file where I keep for updating, and then I upload it to the share file. But you see there, I've got it all separated out because I'm anticipating, Clone Wars and needing to separate out their officers and their squadrons and things like that. So yeah, it's all here, guys. It's all here. It's all done. It's all ready. And so now, if you ever have a question about anything, you can come here. You can check it out. You can read it. You can try to understand it. And then, if you still have questions, you can still try to ask me or ask a judge or something else. But I could talk about this for literally hours. The big part, though, is I just want to jump in to the email here. So I was going to be judging along with Brooks at Worlds this year for 2020, and so I had a one-time multipass to contact Michael, who's one of the developers at FFG, and be like, I have questions, can I get some answers? And he said, yes, if you still have questions after the most recent FAQ, shoot me an email, we'll talk about it, and we'll get going on that. So I do want to state that these responses are not officially endorsed by FFG, though. Neither is my manual, by the way. Like, nothing in there is officially endorsed. It's not, law. It's not, it's essentially, I'm the guy that collected all this stuff. I put it all in one easy-to-find place. Whether you want to interpret things that way or not. I mean, I did try to make sure that I was including, not only myself, but Ian Cross, previous Worlds judge. I've had like 5 or 6 other judges and other really smart, like, rule people review it, take a look at everything. So it wasn't just like my opinion, just writing stuff. I tried to make sure I was including as many people as I possibly could. And at some point, this will transition into a community, led document. And how will this work into the future of the Living Rules document that I know FFG is wanting to proceed into? I don't know yet. But I like to think that this will still be a very beneficial and useful aspect to use alongside that Living Rules document. But anyway, so Michael was really busy still, obviously with everything going on with COVID and isolation and Worlds getting canceled. And so he didn't give essentially like a personalized response to all the questions I said like I would have preferred. However, he did talk to a former developer at FFG, Brooks, who's also judging with me at Worlds this year, and they had multiple conversations about these questions, which essentially Michael's thoughts in processes are rolled in with Brooks's, because again, Michael can't state, oh yes, this is officially what FFG is saying, because that's not his department to be able to do that. This is just heavily influenced by developer response, current and former developers. Again, I have to state that right up front, that if you don't agree with any of this stuff, that's fine. That's your opinion. That's your prerogative. Just know that I did try to get the developer feedback as to the best of my ability. All right. So my writings and responses are going to be in black. Brooks's responses are going to be in red. The first one, and this one's been plaguing us ever since Dust Clouds came out, is what happens, as you see there in the picture. What happens, I'll just blow it up real big and then I'll fix it in a second. Oh, I broke it. There we go. Well, if you can see there, what happens if you're trying to shoot another ship and there's a ship covering that dust field? What happens? Does the attack continue? Is it obstructed? Does it not continue? I have always ruled it that because the dust field wording contains the word traces, and when you define trace in the English language, it does mean any and all things that could potentially be, when you make that line, doesn't matter what's underneath it. And also in the rule book of the RNG, that if there's any question about if something's blocking something, you just simply mark it and remove it and then check. So I've always concluded that no, you can't put a ship in the, and cover up the dust field and then you could shoot through it. That's just, to me, that was crazy. Some people argued otherwise. So it's nice to have clarification that, again, no, the dust field effect still is there. Just mark the ship, pull it off, check, etc. Going into one, this one's plagued the game ever since the game came out. And again, it's so nice to just have clarification on is what happens if shield dials are touching over an obstacle, or some people like to put squadrons next to shield dials on obstacles and be like, oh, I can attack you, it's not obstructed. Again, we have finally have clarification for that. The attacker's shield frames and dials do not obstruct their own attacks. That's per RNG or per FAQ. That was clarified in FAQ that the attacker's shield dials and frames never obstruct their own attacks if they're over obstacles. But that's not the same for the defenders. The defenders' dials, it's very easy to be able to check and see, like, oh yeah, obviously there's an obstacle underneath there. So when you draw a line of sight, that's obstructed. Of course, if there's still like any questions, or if it's just so close, you just kind of have to go with what just do like a coin flip or an agreement that it is or it isn't. But this no longer allows people to try to fiddle and be like, oh yeah, I put the squadron underneath your shield dial and now I can shoot your ship and blah blah blah. And it was really dumb. So for all intents and purposes, attacks are obstructed with the shield dials. Okay. Regarding Commander Beck, as you know, Commander Beck has been really controversial. I haven't really been understanding her, and I thought that I knew a lot, but it's nice to finally get some clarification. And this one we had a lot of conversations about, and pretty much it just comes down to the way that the rules were originally written. They're kind of constrained because obviously they never anticipated the direction or changes of the game is going in. So some of the wording that they wish was included in there is just not there, and it's one of these situations kind of like they're saying you just kind of have to take our word for it that this is how this card works. So for Beck, as Brooks is mentioning, is the timing of Beck is very implicit. It's when you would resolve a command, so you can only ever use Beck in the time frame that you would be able to resolve a command anyway. Some people were trying to say, oh, I can use fleet commands with her. I can use her for boarding troopers. And no, you still can't do any of that. But you can use Beck to combo with other cards like Admiral Piet or Director Krennic, nav teams. For all intents and purposes, you are getting a token. It's not a physical token that you can save or get back with somebody like Wolfie of Arlen, but it is like a ghost token you can use to combo with other card effects like Piet or nav teams to be spent not just for what you usually would spend that token on, but to fuel other effects that cards have, again, but not boarding teams or fleet commands, because again, the timing windows for that are not there. Can you use Beck to add tokens to like the Pursuant and things like that? Absolutely. And as you read there, there's a distinction between resolving a command if you spent a token, which refers to the effect of the command, and spending a command token, which refers to the consumption of the source. So that's really nice to get that distinction, as he mentions there, out, because that helps define as if and what that means for the game. Okay. I then have essentially a list of quick, 9 yes or no clarifications. Some people were still very confused about which hull zone does the salvo attack originate from. There was never any question in my mind, but again, people were making the argument that it doesn't originate from anywhere. It's like the Holy Spirit. It's all around you. It binds us with the Force, not the Holy Spirit. But where does it originate from? Well, as it says, it originates from where you're targeting from, which you still have to use a targeting point. So it is the hull zone that is defending. The next 2 clarifications are in regardings to how Akbar works with salvo and quad laser turrets. In a nutshell, if you use Akbar and that Akbar activated ship is attacked in the future in the front or rear hull zones, can you salvo or quad laser turrets from the zones? No, you can't. Because Akbar's restriction is for the entire round. You can only attack from the left or right hull zones. That's it. So you have to really take that in consideration moving into the future with those kind of thoughts of, is this worth it to me or not to be able to do this? And while I wish that there would be a errata to change that, because I think it's just really restricting Akbar, that's not up to us to make that decision. That has to come from FFG. They are aware of it now, though, and hopefully that's something that potentially will change in the future. But yes, essentially, With Akbar, you can't salvo or quad laser turrets out the front or real hull zone if a ship has activated and used Akbar's card effect. Obviously, if it's before a ship has activated, it can salvo and quad laser turrets to its heart content. Okay. And this kind of rolls into my next question about how does this all work with the gunnery teams, advanced gunnery ordnance pods interactions we just got in the FAQ. Essentially, in a nutshell, because this is going to be take too long to explain, in the objective advanced gunnery, it states that the first player objective ship, if it attacks a target, it cannot attack that target again that round. End of story, period. So, for example, if you have a first player advanced gunnery objective ship, and it has quad laser turrets equipped or salvo, if it is attacked by something and it shoots back at that target, whether that be a ship or a squadron, and then when that ship then finally activates, you cannot shoot that ship or that squadron you've already attacked that round. So you really got to put a lot of thought now into advanced gunnery as first player for your objective ship if you're taking things like salvo and quad laser turrets along with it. Now, that is such a niche interaction that it's going to be so rare that it ever came up. But for me as a judge, like, I felt it was important that I understood how those could potentially play out and if that was developers' intent, which, as stated, it's one of those things like, we kind of don't like that, but that is how the rules are written, and we have to follow the rules as written. Obviously, if you're the second player in the advanced gunnery, it's no problems at all. Again, for gunnery teams, the restriction of gunnery teams is only for that ship's current activation period. It doesn't matter if it's attacked before or after its activation. Gunnery teams only restricts its current activation. Okay. Rift Ambush. Can you slow the forced setup maneuver? Answer to that is yes. Can the special rule maneuver be slowed by G8s? The answer to that is yes. Clarification on Salvage Run and Abandoned Mining Facility, placing obstacles at their distance 1 to 5 or 2 to 5. So in these objectives, it was stating that you could place obstacles from the station that's placed in the center at distance 1 to 5 or 2 to 5, depending on the objective. And some people were placing those obstacles into other players' deployment zones. And I was like, actually, or somebody pointed out to me, it's like, actually, I don't think you can do that because you still have to follow the normal rule of obstacles need to be placed in the setup area beyond distance 3 of each player's edge. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, but I still am going to ask that because I don't know if the objective is overriding that setup rule or not. And it's not. As it mentions there, normal requirements remain in effect, so you can't place, like, for example, the dust fields in the abandoned mining facility, which is what you use to score points on, in your own deployment zone, and you just sit back there and you just farm all day and you're happy. You can't do that. It still needs to be beyond distance 3 of your edge. This is another one that, again, people were just like, oh, it doesn't say I can't, so I can. God, I hate that. People are like, oh, I can place this exogorf on another exogorf because it's an obstacle. And even though the rule in the Rebellion of the Rim rulebook says you can place it touching other obstacles, implying, i.e., not any exogorf obstacles, people were still arguing like, no, other, as in just not itself. It's like, no. And so, again, nice to have clarification. You can only place exogorfs on non-exogorf obstacles. Can you discard cards in multiple upgrade slots? Like, for example, can Darth Vader roll up on boarding troopers and slice boarding troopers off? Like, again, there is never any confusion in my mind that you could, but some people are like, no, because it has 2 icons, you can't do it because there's 2. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. But again, asked that question, got the answer. Yes, you can discard any of those cards if they have the icon and you're able to discard that icon. I'm going to skip Moff Jerjerrod for a moment. I'm going to come back to that. Proximity mine tokens, again, this is stuff that was already pretty well established. It was just nice to have answers on. Can you shoot proximity mine tokens that your ships are overlapping? Like if you deployed and you're overlapping a mine, because again, deploying over a mine doesn't activate the mine. It's only when you end a maneuver near it. Or like, for example, Martin Matten throws a mine underneath your ship. Can you shoot it? No, because the precedent we have for that is only based on unarmed station or the armed stations, which are if there are any ships or squadrons overlapping that station, you can't shoot it. And since that is the only other precedent we have, because it literally is the only other time you can be overlapping anything, that's the same precedent we're using for proximity mine tokens. You can't shoot what you're overlapping. Can you use the linked turbo laser added die effect on the proximity mine token, as long as it's the first squadron attacked? Yes, because the proximity mine is considered a squadron when you are, essentially targeting it or attacking it. Um, when you declare it as defender. So if you want to use your extra die effect to shoot a proximity mine token, you absolutely can. Um, and clearing up some impetuous and ordnance pods interactions, just making sure that yes, you can use impetuous to attack a proximity mine. Yes, you can use your entire ordnance pod attack to attack a proximity mine. Because again, when you shoot a proximity mine, it takes the whole attack. You can't shoot it in any other squadrons in that arc. But this was a good clarification that I got, was because, if you're treating the proximity mine token as a squadron, can you use other effects like Ruthless Strategists on it? And no, you can't. I had this crazy idea of you could throw out proximity mines and use Ruthless Strategists on the mine. You blow up your own mines, but you're dealing essentially free damage to things. They're like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense, and that's fair. So you're attacking that proximity mine token as if it was a squadron, but it's still not a squadron. It is still it's a token. All right, so let's go back to Moff Jerjerrod. So this is the one that is, out of everything else, the one that is absolutely, again, stayed up front, not official FFG endorsed ruling. But when we sat down and we were talking about it, this is one of those things that, as a judge, if I came up on a situation, it would just be so difficult or so impossible for a judge to understand what's going on without a player taking 10 to 15 minutes to explain what's going on, which in a tournament setting, you don't have that. I don't have 15 minutes as a judge to sit there and listen to you telling me what's going on. You're wasting my time. You're wasting your time being able to play. I've got other people that need judge calls. It just takes forever. So we simplified Moff Jerjerrod. Whether you agree with it, whether you hate it, that's your prerogative. Again, this is not officially endorsed. This is just, if we had to make a ruling, this is how we would make a ruling at a tournament. So can the card effect of Moff Jerjerrod be used multiple times at multiple speeds, it should say in the same maneuver, or is it only ever resolved once regardless of speed change? If it is only resolved once, does this card effect only resolve once per maneuver, or does it carry forward into any additional maneuvers that ship may make? Now, if you want to get into the strictest sense and the strictest part of the card reading, you can haggle all day. This is one of the deepest dive holes I've ever gotten into with this game in discussions, and it goes really far, and it's just super complicated, so I'm just going to simplify it. If you wanted to argue that you can resolve Moff Jerjerrod multiple times in the same maneuver, and those multiple times carry over into additional maneuvers, you can absolutely make that argument. But again, there's no way to mark it. There's no way to show a judge when I walk up that that's what's happened, and it would take way too long to explain, and it's too complicated, and it potentially causes some other game-breaking effects that is just not healthy to try to allow that to continue. So in a nutshell, we came to the agreement that Moff Jerjerrod only ever resolves once per maneuver, and that resolving is only for that maneuver only. It does not carry forward into any other additional maneuvers. Meaning, for example, if you brought Admiral Ozzel on, let's say, Demolisher, and you Admiral Ozzel Demolisher, and you want to use Jerjerrod, and you use Jerjerrod, that would be 1 point of damage you have to suffer for that. And then if you wanted to use the ship's normal activation maneuver for Moff Jerjerrod on that, that's another point of damage. And then if you wanted to use engine techs for your third maneuver for that ship, you would then need to suffer, again, a third point of damage to use Moff Jerjerrod if you wanted to use it, again, for each of those maneuvers. And that was the simplest way that we could try to make Jerjerrod just be simple and easy to understand, so that way players can just play and move on and not argue over, what did happen or what didn't happen, or when something was resolved and when it wasn't resolved, because again, there's literally no way to track that. So that is the biggest kerfluffle, that people may get hung up on still. And as Brooks mentions there, that there is, if you wanted to do the literal reading of the card, again, interpretations can contradict what we're saying, but it's just, we're doing this because we have to preserve other interactions and, again, try to preserve the game state to just move forward and not haggle over the details like some players potentially could. So, and I'm happy with this. This is how I always personally felt Gergerod worked, but as a judge, I did argue other things because that's my job, is to make sure I'm understanding everything and want things to just be simple. I just prefer things to be simple and not complicated to figure out. So that is the email response that I got. That is everything on there. This is again my reference manual. I call it the Karnix Armada reference manual. On here, you'll see here I've got the full release version 1.0, April 1st. It's not a joke. None of this is a joke. But of course, if you guys have questions about anything or need answers, leave messages and comments on here. I have covered every single thing in the game. I may not have videos released on everything yet, but I do have everything in here ready, waiting, raring to go. So I hope you guys use this resource and you guys enjoy it. And it's just nice to have that out there for people to have. So you guys are fantastic as always. I very much appreciate all of you. Thank you for supporting my channel. I've been here for over a year now, and I'm just so excited to continue moving forward into Armada, seeing Clone Wars, the spoiled cards, and yeah. I don't know what much else to say. This is really what I wanted to cover, and you guys are fantastic, and I'll have some more videos for this week. You guys are great. I'll see you next time.